first and foremost, the reason that we chose 3 outs was when we were developing it in 2007, we were not seeing any other programs out there. And so we had to start from scratch. Now, when you do research Alice on their website says that they started in 2001, but until Virginia Tech in 2007, nobody was really talking about these programs because it was all based on the law enforcement response, not the people that are there, the true first responders, what we call them. So we started seeing the need and started developing our 3-out program on what people that are there need to know before the police get there. And we wanted something that was very simplistic, and based on our training with law enforcement and military and being principally based, we understood that we wanted something that was not linear in approach. In other words, you can choose whichever one of our 3 outs that you believe is applicable based on your response and to where the threat is. And those 3 outs could be used in any order. We may say them as get out, lock out, take out. In other words, I need to get out of this area to an area that I can lock out, and then if my lockout is failing or is about to fail, then I would go to that takeout option or go back to get out again. So we wanted something that allowed you to respond and have a failure plan in place. But we also knew from our training that if you had too many steps under stress, people are not going to remember that. And that's why, again, we only wanted 3. So you will find that the more steps that you add for people to remember or retain, unless the training goes more in depth, they're probably not going to recall all of those steps. So again, for us, when we developed it, we wanted something very succinct that allowed us to give people those options. So after we developed that program, other programs came out. The Run, Hide, Fight started picking up traction. Alice, Alert now has a program. So there's different models that are out there. So what are the differences between the models? And sometimes they sound very similar, but they have definite difference in the outcomes potentially. So if you look at Alice, and it's a good program, but it is 5 steps. And then our 3 outs are lock out, get out, and take out, again, not in any order. So when you look on face value between those two, the alert is when that is the first option for you to know there is a potential threat. So you could be the first person that observes it. Your job then is to alert other people. For us, in our training, we call that awareness. That is where we try to train personnel to be more aware of their surroundings all of the time and to not rely just on communication from somebody else to determine what their response should be. If I see something, my response should be immediate, and in the process of my response, trying to verbally announce to anyone around me of what the threat is. So we're somewhat similar, but it can be lost in the nuances of the word, alert and awareness. But I think really when you look at those two, that is really kind of what Alice is also trying to put forth in that. So not trying to say anything negative about one program or another, but understand there are going to be differences in those words. Now, in Alice, the second part of that is alert, lockout. Lockout, again, they say the same thing. If you're in an area that can be locked out, then lock out. My concern, though, is a lot of the trainers, and you have to understand that they are training people as instructors, so the quality of the training is only as good as the instructor and what he took away from that program. If it happens in your organization, it's going to be your organization impacted by it, responding to it, and eventually recovering from it. Now, the informed part of that is talking about if anyone else knows where the threat is at, they are to inform everyone else in the area where that threat is at. So if I'm locked down and the threat is on the other side of the building, then many of those trainers are training people to automatically get out of that facility, to evacuate. And I'll be honest, in our way of looking at that, I disagree with that, because I can tell you from all of the training that we have done is that if I'm in a space that I'm locked down, and having been a tactical officer, a SWAT guy for 15 years, understanding the tactical concepts, if I can fight that bad guy at one door, one place in space that's 3 foot wide and 7 foot tall, and there's 15 of us in this room, and we have barricaded that door and he's trying to defeat our barricade, and I don't have a get out option, I would rather fight him in one space than to automatically get out of the building assuming that there's only one threat. and now there's a secondary threat outside, then now I'm evacuating these people away from this space, and now I'm caught into a secondary attack that if I had stayed in my lockdown that was working, why not stay there? And so that's one of the fundamental differences in kind of how we feel there are subtle differences between the training programs and protocols. There's a lot of good things that Alice is doing, and as far as the different response protocols that are out there, I tend to like it better than any of the others except for ours. And I'm only so strongly opinionated about our 3 outs because all of the training that we've done under stress, putting people through scenarios and seeing the success, but I also get to play the bad guy. And I get to see when these people are trained and that response is immediate, and when they do things correctly, how difficult it is to try to, one, penetrate the door, and if I get through the door, what's on the other side of it. One of the other things that I tend to hesitate about is in Alice, when they talk about the fight back, they call it countering. And even in their training, they say this is not fighting. That fighting is being defensive in nature, countering is being offensive. But they don't even tell you, they say countering is not fighting. And I kind of disagree with that because the subtlety of telling people we're not talking about fighting, we're almost saying don't fight. But the reality is we believe, what other choice do you have? If your lockout is failing, if your get out is failing, and it's you and the bad guy, what other choice do you have but to fight? He's made the decision for you. So for me to say you should counter, and I have to say it like this, if I'm beating the tar out of you, do you want to just counter me or do you want to fight me? Fighting brings on a whole different mindset. Fighting means I'm going to come at you to stop you. And while we're saying both Alice and us, we're saying this is a last resort option. It is, but I'm going to flat out tell you, take out. You do anything and everything you can to take that person out. If it's his arm coming through the door, I'm going to take his arm out. Because if I can take his arm out, maybe he gets the message. I think I'm going to go away. I'm not going to try and come further through that door. Then I've succeeded. And I didn't have to take things and make them worse. So for me, there's those subtle differences that you have to look at in the wording or the verbiage that's used, because of the context that it's conveyed can set the mindset up almost for failure. And so for us, with lockout, get out, take out, there is always a failure option there. If my lockout's failing, or I know that I can't lock this space out, I already know that I have to try to get out, identify my entrance exits, my secondary exit points, and know then that if I can't use either one of those, he's made the decision, I'm going to go to that takeout. I'm going to use those improvised weapons around me. I'm going to direct other people around me to join in. And having played the bad guy in so many scenarios where, to be quite honest, my partner and I both have been significantly hurt in training by people overreacting and using simple weapons that have my partner 8 staples in his head. I've had my head cut open by a belt buckle. Something as simple as that can really change the mindset of the attacker of wanting to go through there. And that's just in a training philosophy. So I see what it's like when there's 10 people in a space that all of a sudden start throwing and fighting back, and I'm making 15 decisions, but they're making 1. So the takeout option is a personal decision. It has to be made by the individual, and nobody can make that decision for you. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you, oh, I don't want you to fight, or, it's not about fighting, because the reality is you may have no other choice. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to work 100%. I'm not going to tell you that you may not be killed or injured as a result of it. But what I can tell you is if you get in a fetal position under a table and let him make the decision for you, the outcome is probably not going to be good. And you're not playing a role in your outcome. In everything that we do and everything that we teach, we want you to play a role. So if your organization has a policy for an intruder, for a lockdown, for something like that, I encourage you, 1, to become familiar with it, to start asking yourself, how would I lock this space out that I work in every single day? When I'm not in my space and I'm in the cafeteria, how would I respond if something happened there? I can't lock that space out, so now I need to be more aware of where are my get out options. And if he comes from this direction, I'm going to go that direction. And then as a last resort, if it starts at the table that I'm sitting at, My lockout has failed, my get out may be failing. I have to go straight to that takeout option. Have I made that personal decision? Is there someone in my life today worth living for? And if that's the case, you've made the decision. Now understand what you're going to do. You're much better prepared mentally now to respond to any types of these incidents. But don't think that somebody at your place of employment will tell you what your response needs to be. If you're turning over your safety to somebody else in that split second, you're looking at failure. You need to know what you will do, not what somebody else will tell you to do, because then it's already too late. And what we want you to understand, yes, the police are coming, but you are the first responder. You're the true first responder, and what you do will have the greatest likelihood of success or failure on this overall incident. And if you're prepared mentally and understand how you will apply your lockout, get out, or take out, or your get out, take out to a lockout, you understand what you will do, your response will be much faster and much better.